So we've talked about so far that skin cancers are sores that don't heal, bumps that are concerning, and particularly a mole that's changing colors, A, B, C, D, and E. Go read up about this. Those, if you're worried, make sure you see your doctor, who may refer you to Dr. King for more evaluation. But I guess the most important way to treat cancers is to prevent them.
That's correct.
So what should everyone be aware of about skin cancer, and what can they do about it?
Yeah, again, we've talked about this on the prior section. Sunscreen, protect, protect, protect. Broad-brimmed hats, lightweight protective clothing. If you see a spot that's changing, get it checked out. Don't ignore it. It can be a life-threatening event. And some routine maintenance. If you're over 40 and you're getting the little crusty spots that are tender to the touch, those are precancers, which could be turning into squamous cell skin cancer. So some routine maintenance on those to prevent skin cancers.
I mean, if you look at the average Arkansas farmer who is reaching retirement age, their skin looks terrible. It really does. And I think if you spend your day working out in the sun, I hope that with time, we will pay more attention to preventing sun exposure. So it really is sun exposure that leads to every kind of cancer?
95% of basal cell carcinomas and squamous cell carcinomas are a direct relationship to sun exposure. Melanomas are a little different story. 65% of melanomas are directly related to sun exposure. There is a genetic component that's a little heavier with melanoma. So if you've had a melanoma, your first-degree family members have an increased risk of a melanoma.
So someone like myself, whose sister and mother had a melanoma, my siblings need to be particularly aware. Of course, sometimes melanoma occurs in non-sun exposed. It can occur in the bowel. It can occur in areas that are never exposed to the sun. But nevertheless, is there a difference between how you expose yourself to the sun and the various cancers?
As you were saying earlier, you know, sunburn exposure, the number of sunburns you've had will certainly increase your risk of melanoma in a lifetime. Direct sun exposure, tanning bed exposure, all of those are going to give you an increased risk. I call it the cumulative effect. From the day you're born till the day you're sitting in this chair, you don't lose any of the damage that you've accumulated. So it builds, 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 builds. And so you don't see too many 20-year-olds running around with squamous cell carcinomas or basal cell carcinomas, because that's a sun exposure type issue. Now there are some out there, it's a rarity.
So, you know, it's also not really I mean, if you're more fair-skinned, blonde, redheads, you're more sun sensitive than someone who is olive or African American.
Exactly.
But they can get skin cancers too.
Exactly.
So no matter where you come from, if you're swarthy Mediterranean or African American, you would still recommend sunscreen, hats, and don't be out in the middle of the sun at the heat of the day.
Exactly.
Is there anything else but exposure to the sun that can prevent cancers? Is there anything else we can do
to prevent skin cancer?
Skin cancer.
Mainly, it's 95% of it is direct relationship to sun exposure. So there's very minimal others. You know, there's a genetic component that plays a role in that, but mainly it is sun exposure.
So now let's say we've decided we're going to become fanatic. How do you choose the correct sunscreen to prevent yourself from getting cancer? And is it a good idea to wear a tiny bikini or a little bathing suit if you're a man and lying out there in the sun slathered with sunscreen? Are you safe?
It depends on how much you've applied. Nothing is going to block all of the sun's rays. SPF 30 or above sunscreen is what you need to get. Don't get below SPF 30. But if you have SPF 30, you have adequate coverage. The flip of that is Is it a spray? Is it a cream? Is it a lotion? And how long is it going to stay on? So if you have an SPF 30 spray that's going to stay on for 12 minutes, probably wasting your time.
So firstly, when it says nothing is water resistant, I mean, when you say you can swim with a sunscreen, is that really true?
Some you can. There's some sunscreens that are really good at staying on while sweating or while swimming. That's stated you need to reapply at least every 2 hours, even with that type.
So, if you're out in the sun every 2 hours, if you are just going through an ordinary day, spending the majority of your time indoors, you probably only need to put sunscreen on the sun-exposed areas. So your hands, your face, and if you're balding, probably something on your hair as well. But it does matter. What does broad spectrum mean? Is that important too?
Yes, SPF factor, SPF 30, it only tells you about blockage of UVB rays. There are also UVA rays, which are long wavelength rays that cause aging of the skin. It can cause some skin cancers as well. Most sunscreens today will say broad spectrum on it. So that's something you need to look for, is broad spectrum on the label. It means it's blocking UVA and UVB rays.
So basically, if you want a sunscreen, SPF 30 or higher, broad spectrum, is it better to use a spray, a lotion, or a cream?
It depends. I call it daily use or an active use. So my daily sunscreens are a lotion, like a moisturizing lotion with SPF 30 in it. Like you said, if you're going to work, you're not going to be fishing, hiking, a lightweight one that's just not going to paint you white. Now, if you're actually fishing, hiking, outdoors, working in the garden, you'll need one of the thicker ones that's going to stay on longer.
And also, it's probably a good idea to wear protective clothing as well.
Exactly.
So, in summary, if you have a sore that doesn't heal, if you have a mole that's changed color, if you have a new black mole, if it's irregular in size, you have to go and see you. And you recommend, if you're over 40 and you've had a lot of exposure, once a year?
Yeah, not a bad idea at all.
Not a bad idea. And if you're worried about a lesion, how do they contact you, Dr. King?
Yeah, our phone number is 425-5464 or 425-KING, K-I-N-G.
Dr. King, it's a pleasure. We'll be back next month to talk about another topic, and I hope you've enjoyed this, and thank you so much for listening, being there, and letting me spend time with you. Bye-bye.